He didn't wake up. The most powerful man in the city lay there motionless, and his fiancée? She was smiling, but someone was watching. Someone who knew exactly what had happened the night before, and what she saw could save his life, or condemn her forever. That morning, the mansion awoke in silence, the kind of silence that precedes tragedy. The tycoon, the man who controlled fortunes and destinies, didn't open his eyes. The doctors arrived rushing in, but no one understood what had happened. The bride wept loudly, dramatically, holding his hand as if she were losing the love of her life. But Maria, the black maid who had served in that house for years, knew the truth. She had seen it. The night before, in the shadows of the kitchen, she saw the bride pour something into his drink. Maria tried to warn her. She ran to the housekeeper, desperate, but was called a liar, envious, crazy. Now, while everyone ran in panic, Maria looked at her mistress's room and remembered the bottle. She knew where the bottle was. Subscribe now and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What city or country are you from? I love knowing who's here with me in this story. He didn't wake up. That morning should have been like any other at the Almeida mansion. But when the sun streamed through the velvet curtains and illuminated the face of the most powerful man in the city, he didn't open his eyes. And in that moment, everything that seemed perfect began to crumble. Because while everyone rushed desperately trying to save him, there was someone there trembling in the corner of the room who knew exactly what had happened, and the weight of that secret could destroy her. The shouts echoed through the marble corridors when the housekeeper found the boss unconscious. The magnate Eduardo Almeida, the one who commanded fortunes and destinies with a simple wave of his hand, lay motionless on the Egyptian silk sheets. His skin was pale, his breathing so weak that it was barely possible to perceive the movement of his chest. The employees panicked. Someone called the doctors. Another ran to inform his fiancée, and that's when she appeared. Clarice descended the stairs like an actress entering a stage. Her satin robe slid over her body as she ran towards the bedroom, her hair perfectly styled despite the supposed urgency of the moment. When she reached the bedside, her cries filled the house. Tears streamed down her porcelain face, her hands trembling as she held his cold hand. "Herr Eduardo, my love, please wake up, don't leave me." Her voice was a lament that echoed through the walls, making everyone around her feel pity for the woman about to lose the great love of her life. Everyone except one person. Maria leaned against the wall of the next room, invisible as she had always been during all those years serving in that house. Her hands trembled, not from fear for her employer's health, but from the crushing weight of what she knew. She had seen it. The previous night, when everyone was asleep and the mansion was plunged into silence, Maria had gone down to the kitchen to get water, and that's when she saw the shadow moving near the counter. Clarice, the future Mrs. Almeida, was there, alone, pouring something into a crystal glass. Maria stood paralyzed behind the half-open door, observing every movement of that woman. The small bottle, the white powder falling into the amber liquid, the spoon stirring slowly, the icy smile that touched Clarice's lips when she finished. Maria wanted to scream. She wanted to run. She wanted to do something. But who was she? A black maid against the word of a high society woman? When she finally gathered the courage to tell Donna Emilia, the housekeeper, what she received in return was a verbal slap that hurt more than any physical blow. "Liar, envious! You're angry because she's going to be the mistress of this house and you'll remain just a maid." Donna Emilia's words still echoed in her mind as she watched the doctors arrive, their black suitcases full of hope that Maria knew was useless, because she knew what Clarice had done. And now, seeing that woman cry in despair, seeing everyone consoling the murderer while the victim fought for her life, Maria felt something new being born within her. It wasn't just fear, it was fury. A silent, deep fury that began to burn away the chains of submission. The doctors examined Eduardo, frowning, whispering amongst themselves. No one understood. A healthy, strong man simply wouldn't wake up. Meanwhile, Clarice was already asking about wills, about powers of attorney, disguising her greed as the concern of a devoted wife. And Maria, in that forgotten corner, clenched her fists until her nails dug into her palms. She remembered the bottle. She had seen where Clarice had kept it. It all began 12 hours earlier, when the mansion was already asleep under a cloak of deceptive silence. Maria had gone downstairs that Tuesday night because she couldn't sleep. The summer heat made the small upstairs room stifling, and her throat was dry. It was almost 2 in the morning when her bare feet touched the cold kitchen floor. The full moon streamed through the large window, casting long shadows on the white marble countertops. She didn't need to turn on the lights. She knew every inch of that place after 15 years of service. That's when he heard the footsteps. Maria froze. Who would be awake at this hour? Her first reaction was to hide, an instinct she had learned over the years. People like her needed to be invisible, especially when the employers were moving around the house. She cowered behind the pantry, her heart pounding so hard she feared the sound might give her away. It was then that the kitchen door opened and Clarice entered. The future Mrs. Almeida was different, without the mask of perfection she wore during the day, without the rehearsed smiles and sweet words. She walked with a cold, calculating determination, like a surgeon about to perform a delicate operation. She wore a dark silk robe, and her normally impeccable hair was loose over her shoulders. But it was her face that was most frightening. There was no emotion there, no trace of love, of regret, of doubt, only a mechanical concentration on what she was about to do. Maria held her breath when she saw Clarice open Eduardo's special bottle of whiskey, the one he kept for important occasions. The woman picked up one of the crystal glasses with such ease that it seemed she was simply preparing an ordinary drink. But then, from her robe pocket, she pulled out a small vial, so small it fit in the palm of her hand. Maria had to squint to see better through the crack in the half-open door. The liquid inside the bottle was clear. Clarice carefully opened it, pouring it over the glass of whiskey. 1, 2, 3 drops fell, mixing with the golden amber of the drink. Then she took a silver spoon and stirred slowly, watching the liquid swirl in hypnotic spirals. And it was at that moment that Maria saw something that sent a chill down her spine. Clarice smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy or relief. It was the smile of someone who had just won a silent battle, the smile of someone who knows that no one will suspect anything. Maria wanted to scream. She wanted to run and snatch that glass from her hands. She wanted to wake Eduardo and warn him that the woman he loved, the woman he was about to marry in 2 weeks, was poisoning his drink. But her feet wouldn't move. It was as if invisible roots held her to the ground, because Maria knew deep down that if she left, if she confronted Clarice at that moment, it would be her word against hers, and who would they believe? The sophisticated, beautiful, and well-mannered fiancée of the magnate, or the black maid cleaning their bathrooms? The paralysis was physical, but the pain was emotional. Maria felt ashamed of herself, ashamed for not having courage, ashamed for being invisible, even in moments where her voice could save a life. She had seen scenes from movies where heroes prevented crimes at the last second, but she wasn't a heroine. She was just Maria, the maid, the one no one saw, no one heard, no one took seriously. Clarice placed the glass on the silver tray, along with some imported biscuits that Eduardo liked to eat before bed. She wiped the jar with a cloth and put it back in her pocket. Then, with the same coldness with which she had entered, she left the kitchen carrying the tray. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway until they disappeared toward the master bedroom upstairs. Maria waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. Only when she was absolutely certain that Clarice wouldn't return did she finally manage to move. Her legs trembled so much that she had to hold onto the counter to avoid falling. Tears streamed down her face, tears of frustration, of fear, of helplessness. She had just witnessed a crime and had done nothing to stop it, but there was still time. Eduardo hadn't drunk yet. Maria ran up the stairs, her feet now making noise against the wooden steps. She needed to tell someone. She needed help. She ran to the room of Donna Amelia, the housekeeper who had worked there for 30 years, who had authority, who would be listened to. She banged on the door desperately, waking the older woman from her sleep. "Mrs. Amelia, please, you need to listen to me." Maria's voice came out broken, hurried. "Mrs. Clarice, she put something in Mr. Eduardo's drink. I saw it. She was in the kitchen and—" "Maria," Amelia's voice cut like a knife. "Are you crazy? Banging on my door in the middle of the night with these absurd accusations?" "But I saw it. I swear I saw it. She had a bottle and poured it into his whiskey." Donna Amelia's gaze changed. It became hard, cruel, disappointed. "You're jealous, aren't you? Jealous because she's going to be the mistress of this house and you'll continue being what you've always been, a maid. I expected more from you, Maria. I expected you to know your place." The words hit Maria like punches. She tried to explain again, but Donna Amelia was already slamming the door in her face, telling her to go back to her room before she woke the whole house with her lies. Maria stood there in the dark hallway, feeling smaller than ever. No one would believe her. They never had. They never would. She went back to her room, but she didn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling, imagining Eduardo drinking that whiskey, imagining the poison coursing through his body, paralyzing his organs, stealing his consciousness. And when the sun rose and the screams began, Maria knew it was too late to save him. But perhaps it wasn't too late for the truth. Now, standing in that corner of the room, while the doctors examined Eduardo, Maria felt the weight of regret crushing her chest, because she hadn't just witnessed the crime. She had seen the exact moment he drank. After being humiliated by Donna Amelia, Maria had returned to her room, but sleep was impossible. Every passing minute was torture. She lay on the narrow bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, listening to the heavy silence of the early morning. And then, about half an hour later, she heard Edward's footsteps in the hallway. He had a habit of working late at the office, reviewing contracts and numbers she couldn't even imagine. Maria went downstairs again. She didn't know what she was going to do, she didn't have a plan, but something inside her was pulling her back to those corridors. Maybe there was still time. Maybe she could accidentally drop the glass, break the crystal, invent any excuse, anything to prevent the inevitable. She arrived at the door of the master bedroom just as Eduardo was entering. Through the crack, she saw Clarice already lying on the bed, leafing through a fashion magazine, the silver tray on the nightstand beside her. The glass of whiskey gleamed under the soft light of the bedside lamp. Innocent, inviting, deadly. "You were late today, darling," Clarice said, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "I made your favorite drink. You must be so tired." Eduardo smiled, loosening his tie. He was a handsome, strong man, with that confident air of someone who had built an empire with his own hands. But at that moment, in Maria's eyes, he seemed vulnerable, naive, too in love to see the serpent that shared his bed. "You're an angel, Clarice," he said, picking up the glass. "I don't know what I would do without you." Maria wanted to scream. "Open your mouth, Maria. Scream. Do something." But her throat was closed, as if invisible hands were strangling her. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It was the paralysis of fear, the kind only those who have lived at the bottom of the social pyramid can understand. The fear that doesn't come from outside, but from within. The fear that teaches you, from childhood, that your voice doesn't matter, that your place is to be silent, that questioning authority is signing your own death warrant. Eduardo brought the glass to his lips. Maria saw the golden liquid touching her mouth, saw the movement of his throat as he swallowed. 1 sip, 2 sips, 3. He downed half the glass while commenting on the day's business, completely oblivious to the poison going down his throat. Clarice watched with those icy blue eyes, a half smile on her lips. "Drink more, love. You need to relax. Tomorrow will be an important day." And he drank. He finished the entire glass while Maria, hidden in the dark hallway, felt silent tears streaming down her face. She had failed. She had let it happen. And now, 12 hours later, she saw the result of her cowardice lying in that bed, surrounded by confused doctors and a premature widow who was already calculating her inheritance. Guilt weighed heavily on Maria's chest. It wasn't just the guilt of not having prevented the crime, but the guilt of being who she was. Of being born where she was born, of the color she was born in, the class she was born into. Because if she were someone else, someone with a voice, with power, with credibility, Eduardo would be awake now. But she was just Maria, and people like her had no right to accuse people like Clarice. "Mr. Almeida is in a deep coma," announced the chief physician, removing the stethoscope from his neck. "We haven't been able to identify the cause. It may have been a silent stroke or perhaps some severe allergic reaction. We need to transfer him to the hospital immediately." Clarice covered her face with her hands, sobbing loudly. "Do whatever it takes. Money is no object. Please, save my fiancé." The words were perfect, rehearsed, convincing. Even the doctors seemed moved by the woman's devotion. Maria watched everything from that corner, invisible as always, feeling a rage growing inside her, a rage that began to suffocate her fear, because she had seen where Clarice hid the bottle. After serving the poisoned whiskey, Maria had continued watching through the crack in the door. She saw Clarice go to the private bathroom, open the medicine cabinet, and hide the small bottle behind a row of imported perfumes. The bottle was there. The proof was there. But who would believe her if she showed it? They would accuse her of putting it there, of trying to incriminate her employer, of being a resentful and dangerous maid. Maria looked at Clarice, who was now embracing Donna Amelia, as if seeking solace. She saw the housekeeper stroking her hair, murmuring words of comfort. Then Clarice opened her eyes for a second, and their gazes met across the room. It was just a moment, a fraction of a second, but Maria saw something that chilled her to the bone. Clarice was smiling. A tiny smile, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A smile of victory, of power, of absolute certainty that she would get away with it. And it was at that moment that something changed inside Maria. The transformation was subtle, but profound. It was no longer just about saving Eduardo. It was about justice. It was about proving that her voice had value, even if the whole world said otherwise. It was about breaking the invisible chains that had held her down for 15 years. Was she afraid? Yes. Could she lose everything? Yes. But for the first time in her life, Maria understood that some things were worth more than the safety of silence, and the truth was one of them. But before making any decisions, Maria needed allies. She couldn't do this alone, not this time. It was still morning and the house was in complete chaos with Eduardo's transfer to the hospital. The paramedics were preparing the stretcher. Clarice was giving dramatic orders about which doctors to call, and nobody was paying attention to the maid sneaking through the hallways. Maria searched for Joanna, the cook who had worked at the mansion for almost as long as she had. Joanna was a woman in her 50s, a mother of 4, with calloused hands and a heart that Maria had always believed to be kind. If anyone would understand, it would be her. She found Joanna in the kitchen, preparing coffee for the doctors, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the cups on the tray. "Joanna," Maria whispered, holding her friend's arm. "I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Joanna turned around, her eyes red from crying. "Maria, this is no time for conversation. The boss is dying. We need—" "He's not dying by accident, Joanna. He was poisoned." The words came out in an explosion of despair. "I saw it. I saw Donna Clarice put something in his drink last night." Joanna's face changed. First came surprise, then confusion, and finally something Maria hadn't expected: distrust. "What? Maria, are you serious?" "Yes, I swear on everything that is sacred. I was in the kitchen when she came in and poured a liquid from a bottle into his whiskey. I saw it, Joanna, and I tried to warn Donna Emilia, but she didn't believe me." Joanna took a step back, as if Maria's words were contagious. "Maria, are you listening to what you're saying? Are you accusing Donna Clarice of trying to kill the man she loves? She doesn't love him. She wants his money. I saw it in her eyes, Joanna. I saw the coldness, the malice. Please, you need to believe me." But Joanna was shaking her head, her lips forming a thin line of disapproval. "Maria, I've always thought you were a good person, but this is very serious. You can't go around making accusations like that without proof. Donna Clarice is a respectable lady, from a traditional family. Why would she do such a thing? For the money, for the inheritance. Joanna, please, enough." Joanna's voice came out louder than intended, making Maria recoil. "I know what this is, Maria. You've always had a special affection for the boss. You've always been more dedicated than the others. Could it just be jealousy? Envy of seeing him happy with another woman?" The words hit Maria like slaps in the face. "No, that's not it at all. How could you think—" "I think so because I know people like that," Joanna continued, her voice now laden with a cruelty Maria had never heard before. "People who want what they can't have. People who invent stories to destroy the happiness of others. You should be ashamed, Maria. The man is fighting for his life and you're here trying to tarnish his fiancée's reputation." Maria felt tears burning her eyes. It wasn't just the rejection that hurt. It was the betrayal. Joanna, whom she considered a friend, with whom she shared meals and conversations during breaks, was looking at her as if she were a stranger, as if she were a criminal. "I saw it, Joanna," Maria insisted, her voice now only a broken whisper. "I saw it, and you need to— What I need is for you to shut your mouth before someone important hears you saying this nonsense. Do you want to be fired? Do you want to go to jail for defamation? Because that's what will happen if you continue with this crazy story." Other maids began to enter the kitchen, drawn by Joan's altered voice. Helena, the young woman who took care of the laundry. Fatima, the one who cleaned the bathrooms. They all stopped to observe the scene, their curious eyes going from Maria to Joanna. "You know what I think?" Joanna continued, now addressing an audience. "I think you're jealous. It's always been like that, hasn't it? Wanting to be more than a maid, but you're not, and you never will be. Donna Clarice is a lady. You are— You." The others laughed. It was a low, uncomfortable laugh, but it was there. Maria looked around, searching for a sympathetic face and expression of understanding, but she only found distrust, pity, and something worse. Agreement. They believed Joanna, not her. At that moment, Maria understood a devastating truth. Social hierarchy didn't exist only between bosses and employees. It also existed among the oppressed themselves. Those women who should have been her sisters in the struggle, her allies in vulnerability, had learned the lessons of the system so well that they were now replicating it among themselves. They judged her not by the truth of her words, but by the audacity of her accusations. Maria ran out of the kitchen, tears finally overflowing. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. I was completely alone. And somewhere up there, Clarice was probably smiling, knowing she had won before the battle even began. But as she climbed the service stairs, something inside Maria wouldn't budge. A small but insistent voice whispered, "You have the proof, the vial. Nobody believes you? Then show them." The ambulance carried Eduardo away, its sirens cutting through the morning air. Maria watched from the second-floor window, seeing that strong, powerful man being carried away like a broken doll. The red lights flashed against the blue sky, creating a cruel contrast between the beauty of the day and the horror that was unfolding. Clarice went in the private car, accompanied by Donna Emilia and the family lawyer Dr. Silvera, a gray-haired man in an impeccable suit who appeared at the mansion less than an hour after Eduardo's collapse. Too fast, Maria thought, as if you were already expecting the connection. The following hours were strange. The house, normally so full of life and movement, was as silent as a tomb. The maids whispered amongst themselves, cleaning the rooms with mechanical movements, unsure of exactly what to do. Maria tried to keep herself occupied, but her thoughts kept returning to that bottle hidden in Clarice's bathroom. It was late afternoon when the phone rang. Donna Emilia answered, and Maria saw the color drain from her face. When she hung up, the housekeeper gathered all the maids in the living room. "Mr. Eduardo is in a deep coma," she announced, her voice trembling. "The doctors don't know when, or if, he will wake up." The silence that followed was as heavy as lead. Some women began to cry. Maria stood there, frozen, feeling a mixture of guilt and anger burning in her veins. She could have prevented this. She should have prevented this. "Mrs. Clarice will be spending the night at the hospital," Mrs. Emilia continued. "She asked us to keep the house in order. She said that we need to prepare for the worst." But when Clarice returned the next morning, she didn't look like a woman preparing for the worst. She looked like a woman preparing to take control. She entered through the front door with Dr. Silvera at her side, the two of them talking quietly about things that made her eyes sparkle with something very different from sadness. Maria was polishing the silverware in the entrance hall when she heard them settle into the library. The door remained ajar, and their voices reached her, too clear to ignore. "We need to act fast," Clarice said, her voice no longer sweet and suffering, as she usually did in front of others. Now it was cold, calculating, businesslike. "How long until I can access the accounts?" "Technically, without a previously signed power of attorney, you don't have direct access," Dr. Silvera replied. "But if he doesn't wake up in the next few days, we can initiate an emergency guardianship process. You, as his fiancée, practically his wife, have a strong position. And the will? Did he leave anything written down?" "Yes, but it was done years ago before he met her. He leaves almost everything to charities and a few long-time employees." However, Maria noticed the significant pause in the lawyer's voice. "If you marry, even with him in a coma, you automatically become the sole heir by law." Clarice laughed. It was a low sound without joy, pure calculation. "Then let's get married. In the hospital chapel if necessary, with him unconscious if needed. He won't object after all." Maria felt her stomach churn. It was so brazen, so cruel, so monstrous. That woman was planning to marry a man in a coma to steal everything he had built. And the worst part, it was legal. It was possible. Eduardo had given her all the power she needed simply by trusting her, by loving her, by being naive enough to believe that the feeling was reciprocated. "There's one more thing," said Dr. Silvera, and Maria noticed a hesitation in his voice. "If he dies before the wedding, you get nothing. But if he dies after, I'll get everything later." Clarice finished the sentence, as if discussing the dinner menu. "How long do the doctors give you?" "With the right medication, he can stay in this state for weeks, maybe months, but without it..." The lawyer left the sentence hanging in the air, heavy with possibilities. "I understand." Clarice's voice had that coldness of someone doing calculations, evaluating options, weighing costs and benefits. "Organize the wedding for the day after tomorrow. A simple, discreet ceremony, just the necessary witnesses. And then we'll see what happens." Maria had heard enough. She retreated silently from the hall. her heart pounding so hard she feared they might hear. She ran up the stairs, through the corridors, until she reached the master bedroom. The door to Clarice's ensuite bathroom was closed, but not locked. No one expected a maid to dare enter there. Maria opened the medicine cabinet with trembling hands. Shelves were full of French perfumes, imported creams, bottles of expensive medicine. And there, hidden behind a bottle of Chanel No. 5, was the small, clear glass bottle. She picked it up, feeling its weight in the palm of her hand. It was light, almost empty, but it represented everything. Proof, truth, justice, but also danger. Because if someone found her with it, Maria closed her fingers around the bottle, feeling the cold glass against her skin. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear the blood pulsing in her ears. This was real. The proof was right there in the palm of her hand. Small, discreet, but devastating. Enough to destroy Clarice, or to destroy herself, because Maria knew how things worked. If someone found her there in that private bathroom where maids weren't allowed, holding a bottle of unknown substance, the narrative would be obvious. The envious maid who poisoned her boss and was now trying to incriminate the innocent fiancée, her word against Clarice's. And everyone had already made it clear which side they were on. She needed to hide the bottle. But where? If she kept it in her room, they could search her things. If she threw it away, she would lose the only evidence. If she handed it over to the police now, without context, without support, she would be arrested before she could even explain. Maria heard footsteps in the hallway. Quick, decisive, coming toward her. Panic. She stuffed the bottle into her apron pocket and left the bathroom, trying to appear natural, as if she were just fulfilling her duties. But her hands trembled as she pretended to tidy up the already perfectly folded towels. The bedroom door burst open. Clarice rushed in like a whirlwind, her cell phone pressed to her ear, talking to someone about flowers for the wedding. When she saw Maria there, her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" "Cleaning, ma'am, as I always do." Maria kept her voice steady, but she felt the bottle burning in her pocket as if it were on fire. Clarice hung up the phone. She walked slowly to Maria, her high heels echoing on the wooden floor. She was taller, more imposing, and she used that to her advantage. "This room doesn't need cleaning. I made the bed myself today. Why are you here, Maria?" The question hung in the air between them, laden with threat. Maria felt sweat trickle down her back. "Mrs. Amelia asked me to check if there was any laundry to do, ma'am." Clarice's eyes scanned the room, assessing it, searching for anything out of place. Then they went to the bathroom. Maria saw the woman's face change when she noticed the closet door was slightly ajar. She always left it closed. Clarice went into the bathroom. Maria heard the footsteps, the sound of the cabinet being opened completely, the bottles being moved. The silence that followed was deafening. When Clarice returned to the room, her face was pale, but her eyes burned with an icy fury. "You went into my closet." It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "No, ma'am, I just—" "Liar!" Clarice lunged forward, grabbing Maria's arm tightly. "You went through my things. What were you looking for? What did you take?" Maria tried to break free, but Clarice's strength was surprising. "I didn't bring anything. Please, you're hurting me. Empty your pockets." Now, the world stopped. Maria felt the bottle weighing like lead on her apron. If she took it off, Clarice would know. She would know the evidence had disappeared. She would know who had taken it. And then it would be a matter of minutes until the police arrived, until she was accused, until everything ended in the worst possible way. But if she didn't take it off, Clarice would force her. She was already reaching for Maria's apron, her long fingers like claws, poised to uncover the secret that could save Eduardo. That's when the decision came. Clear, inevitable, terrifying. Maria pushed Clarice with all her might, making the woman stumble backward, and then she ran. She left the room, went down the stairs, passed through the living room where Dr. Silvera was talking on the phone, ignoring Clarice's shouts behind her. "Catch her, that woman stole something from me." The other maids appeared in the hallways, confused and frightened. Donna Amelia blocked the front door. "Maria, what have you done?" But Maria didn't stop. She dodged through the kitchen, went out the back door, and ran through the garden while she heard the chaos erupting inside the mansion. She had the proof. She had the truth. But now she was running like a criminal. And the question that haunted her was simple, but terrifying. Where could she go? Where could a black maid, penniless and without allies, hide from people with all the power in the world? Maria ran until she could no longer breathe. Her legs burned, her lungs ached, but she continued until she finally stopped behind an abandoned church on the outskirts of the city. It was a place she knew from her childhood, when there were still Sunday masses and the bell rang, calling the faithful. Now it was only ruins and silence. She let herself fall onto the cold stone floor, leaning her back against the peeling wall. Only then did he allow the tears to come. They weren't tears of fear, although the fear was there, throbbing and real. They were tears of exhaustion, of a lifetime carrying the weight of being invisible, of not mattering, of knowing that her truth was worth less than the lie of someone with money and fair skin. Maria pulled the vial from her pocket with trembling hands. She looked at it as if it were a grenade about to explode, because that's exactly what it was. That small object had the power to change everything, to save Eduardo, to destroy Clarice, to prove that she, Maria, was neither crazy nor a liar. But it also had the power to destroy her. If she came back now, if she showed that to the police, who would believe her version of events? She imagined the scene. Maria, the maid who was seen fleeing the mansion, who was accused of theft by the bride herself, appearing with a bottle saying it was poison. Clarice crying, saying that it was indeed hers, a headache remedy, and that Maria had stolen it to incriminate her out of pure envy. Dr. Silvera confirming that the poor bride was being persecuted by an unbalanced employee. Donna Amelia testifying that Maria had always been jealous of her boss. The other maids agreeing that she had acted strangely. And her, she would be arrested, perhaps even charged with attempted murder. She would lose everything, her freedom, her dignity, the little she had. And Eduardo would continue dying without knowing that the woman he loved was responsible. Maria thought about running away, taking a bus to another city, changing her name, starting over somewhere where nobody knew her, throwing the bottle away and pretending none of this had happened. It would be easy. It would be safe. It would be the logical choice for someone in her position. But then she remembered Eduardo's look when he gave her a Christmas bonus the previous year. "Thank you for everything, Maria," he had said, with genuine sincerity. "You make this house work." They were simple words, but they had meant the world to her, because they were rare, because they came from someone who truly saw her. She also remembered Clarice's smile when she saw him drink the poisoned whiskey. That smile of victory, of absolute certainty that he would get away with it. And Maria understood that if she ran away now, that smile would win, evil would triumph, injustice would continue, and she would have to live the rest of her life knowing that she had the chance to do the right thing and chose silence. Courage is not the absence of fear. Maria learned that in that moment, sitting on the floor of that abandoned church. Courage is acting despite fear. It is choosing the truth even when it may cost you everything. It is refusing to be invisible when the whole world wants you to disappear. She stood up, wiping away her tears with the back of her hand. The bottle was still there, a silent witness to a crime only she had seen. But Maria realized she didn't need everyone to believe her. She only needed one person, the right person. She thought about the hospital where Eduardo was, about the doctors who couldn't understand what was wrong with him. If she could get there, if she could hand the vial directly to a doctor and ask them to run a test, maybe she'd have a chance. Maybe science could speak for her when words failed. But getting to the hospital meant crossing the city. It meant risking being recognized, being caught, being handed over to the police before she could even explain. It was a dangerous journey for someone who was being hunted, and Maria wasn't sure if her courage would be enough to travel that road. She looked up at the sky through the broken roof of the church. The sun was beginning to set, painting the clouds orange and pink. Soon, it would be night, and in the darkness, perhaps she would have a chance to move unseen. The decision had been made. There would be no escape. There would be a fight, even if she lost, even if no one believed her, even if it cost her everything. Because some battles need to be fought not because you can win, but because they are the right thing to do. Night fell like a protective cloak over Maria as she walked through the streets toward the hospital. She avoided the main avenues, staying in the shadows of the alleys and lanes she had known since childhood. The bottle burned in her pocket like a promise and a threat at the same time. When she finally arrived at San Lucas Hospital, the white building shone under the spotlights like a beacon. Maria observed the main entrance, where security guards chatted near the automatic doors. She couldn't enter that way. She would be recognized, stopped, handed over. She needed another route. She walked around the building until she found the service entrance, the one where cleaning and maintenance staff passed through. People like her, invisible. And for the first time in her life, Maria was grateful for being invisible. She entered with a group of cleaning ladies arriving for the night shift, keeping her head down, pretending to belong. Inside the hospital, he followed the corridors to the intensive care unit. He asked a young nurse where Eduardo Almeida was, saying he was family. The nurse, overwhelmed and tired, simply pointed to the corridor without asking any questions. That's when Maria heard the voices. They were coming from a meeting room with the door ajar. She immediately recognized Clarice's voice, controlled but firm, arguing with someone. Maria approached slowly, hiding behind a cart of medical equipment. Through the crack in the door, he saw the scene. Clarice was seated at the table, surrounded by Dr. Silveira, two doctors in white coats, and a woman in a tailored suit who appeared to be from the hospital's administration. Papers were scattered across the table. Pens were ready to sign. "As I've already explained," said one of the doctors, a white-haired man with a tired expression, "the patient doesn't respond to any stimuli. The tests don't indicate significant brain activity. Without identifying the cause, there's no effective treatment." Clarice covered her face with her hands, the perfect performance of a devastated bride. "So there's no hope? I'm very sorry, miss, but we need to be realistic. Mr. Almeida could remain in this state indefinitely, or..." The doctor left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood. "In that case," Dr. Silveira interjected, sliding some documents across the table, "we need to make practical decisions. Miss Clarice, as the fiancée and future wife, needs legal access to manage Mr. Almeida's affairs during his incapacity." The woman in the tailored suit nodded. "The emergency power of attorney is here. With your signature and the doctor's signatures as witnesses, you will have full authority over medical and financial decisions." Maria saw Clarice pick up the pen. She saw her fingers touch the paper, and it was at that moment that something inside her exploded. It wasn't just courage. It was fury. It was justice. It was the absolute refusal to allow that woman to win. Maria pushed the door so hard it slammed against the wall. Everyone turned, shocked. The white-haired doctor stood up. Dr. Silveira frowned, and Clarice turned as white as a sheet. "Don't sign anything." Maria's voice echoed through the room, louder and firmer than she had ever heard it come from her own throat. "She poisoned him. She's the reason he's dying." The silence was broken by an explosion of voices. "Who are you? How dare you enter here? Call security." But Maria remained firm, her feet planted on the ground, refusing to back down. Clarice stood up, her face a perfectly rehearsed mask of indignation. "Maria, what are you doing here? This woman is an unstable maid. She stole from me and now she's making up these absurd stories." "Lies!" Maria shouted, and for the first time in her life she didn't care who was listening or what they would think of her. "I saw you put poison in his drink and I have proof." The white-haired doctor raised his hand, gesturing for silence. There was something in his gaze, a curiosity that hadn't been there before. "Proof? What proof?" Maria pulled the vial from her pocket with trembling hands. She held it high so everyone could see. "This here. She used this to poison him, and then hid it in her bathroom. I saw everything. Test it. Please, just test this substance and compare it to his blood." Clarice laughed, but it was a tense, humorless laugh. "That's ridiculous. That bottle is mine, yes. It's migraine medicine, and she stole it from my room. She's trying to frame me because she's pathologically jealous of my fiancé." Dr. Silveira stepped towards Maria. "You are committing a very serious crime, young lady. Trespassing, theft, defamation. I'm going to call the police right now." But the white-haired doctor held out his hand. "Wait, give me the bottle." Everyone looked at him, surprised. Clarice especially seemed alarmed. "Doctor, Henrique, you're not going to listen to this. Give me the bottle," he repeated, now looking directly at Maria, and there was something in his eyes that she recognized. It wasn't pity, it wasn't contempt, it was possibility. The possibility that she was telling the truth. Maria walked towards him, ignoring the looks of disgust and anger around her. She handed the vial to the doctor, and for the first time in that entire journey, she didn't lower her head. "Doctor." Henrique held the bottle up to the light, observing the clear liquid that remained at the bottom. His eyes, trained by decades of medicine, narrowed in concentration. He unscrewed the cap slowly, with the care of someone handling something potentially dangerous. "Dr. Henrique, please." Clarice tried again, her voice now with a barely disguised tone of despair. "This is absurd. Don't pay any attention to that woman. She's clearly disturbed, making up stories to..." "Silence." The word came out firm, authoritative. Dr. Henrique brought the bottle to his nose and inhaled carefully. His face changed instantly. His eyes widened, his jaw clenched. He pushed the bottle away as if he had been burned. "My God!" The words came out in a harsh whisper. He looked at Maria, then at Clarice, then back at the bottle. Where did you get this? Maria felt her heart race. I told you, it was in her closet. She used it to… Lies! Clarice exploded, her composure finally cracking. She lunged at Maria, her eyes burning with hatred. You bitch, you put this in my room. You're trying to frame me because you're jealous. You… Clarice! Dr. Silvera tried to restrain her, but she had already lost control. She grabbed Maria's arm, her nails digging into her skin. You're nothing but a maid. Nobody believes you. Nobody ever will. Enough! Dr. Henrique shouted, and the force of his voice made Clarice recoil. He turned to the other doctor in the room. Doctor, Santos, call toxicology immediately and bring the results of patient Almeida's blood tests. The room erupted in a frenetic flurry of activity. Dr. Santos rushed out. The woman in the tailored suit began taking notes. Dr. Silvera tried to calm Clarice, who was now visibly trembling, her mask of a grieving widow completely shattered. Maria remained where she was, her legs trembling, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. That moment could go any way. The doctor could be wrong. It could really be an innocent remedy. And then she would be arrested, humiliated, destroyed. Dr. Henrique turned his attention to Maria. You said you saw her putting that in his drink. What night? The day before yesterday, around 2 in the morning. She put it in his whiskey, 3 drops, and he drank it all. The doctor nodded slowly, as if the pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. That would explain… The symptoms didn't make sense. They weren't consistent with a stroke or heart attack, but if it was poisoning… Clarice stepped forward, regaining some of her composure. Doctor, please, this woman is obviously lying. I love Eduardo. Why would I do something like that? We're getting married in 2 days. Exactly. Maria's voice came out stronger now, fueled by indignation. Because after the wedding, you would inherit everything. I overheard the conversation with Dr. Silvera. About guardianship, about a will, about how it would be easier if he died after the wedding. Dr. Silvera's face lost all color. Clarice opened her mouth, but no sound came out. That's when Dr. Santos came running back, holding papers and accompanied by a young woman in a lab coat with a toxicology patch in her pocket. Dr. Henrique brought the results and Dr. Carvalho. Dr. Henrique handed the vial to the toxicologist. I need you to identify this substance, urgently. Doctor. Carvalho smelled the bottle, placed a drop on a test strip, and examined it under a small flashlight she took from her pocket. Seconds dragged on like hours. Maria could barely breathe. Clarice was as pale as death. It's zolpidem, Dr. Carvalho finally announced. Extremely high concentration. It's not a common medication. This is a dose that could kill. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sound of the machines in the hallway seemed to have stopped. Doctor. Henry picked up Edward's blood test results. His eyes scanned the numbers and then he slammed his hand on the table. Here it is. Benzodiazepines at toxic levels. We didn't look for them before because we had no reason to suspect poisoning. He turned to Clarice with a cold fury. You almost killed a man. Clarice recoiled, shaking her head. No, I don't. That proves nothing. She could have put it in my room. Is there an antidote? Maria interrupted, her voice desperate. Please, can he be saved? Dr. Henrique looked at her, and for the first time since it all began, Maria saw respect in his eyes. Yes, flumazenil. We can reverse the effects, but we need to act now. He pointed at Dr. Santos. Prepare the antidote immediately. And you, he looked at the administrator, call the police. This woman isn't leaving here. When the security guards arrived to escort Clarice away, she finally broke down. Not in tears of regret, but in screams of rage. This is outrageous. I am Clarice Montenegro. You can't do this to me. I'm going to sue you all of you. But no one was listening. Dr. Henrique was already running down the corridor towards the ICU, and Maria, for the first time in days, felt something she had forgotten what it was like. Hope. Maria was allowed to accompany the doctors to the ICU. Her legs trembled as she walked through the cold, white corridors of the hospital. Through the glass window, she saw Eduardo for the first time since it all began. He was even paler, more frail, surrounded by machines that beeped constantly, but he was alive. And now, finally, there was hope. Dr. Henrique prepared the syringe with the antidote while explaining to the medical team what was happening. Intravenous flumazenil. We'll start slowly and monitor the neurological responses. He looked at Maria through the glass and nodded as if to say, you did the hardest part. Now let the medicine do its part. The procedure was quick, but the minutes that followed felt like an eternity. Maria watched the heart monitor. The numbers that made no sense to her but which the doctors studied attentively. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. And then, as if by a miracle, Eduardo's fingers moved. It was a small movement, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The doctors immediately approached, calling his name, asking him to squeeze their hands if he could hear. And he did, weak but conscious. His eyelids trembled, fighting against the weight of sleep that had held him prisoner for days. And finally, slowly, they opened. Maria covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming freely down her face. He was awake, he was alive, and she had done it. Against all odds, against all disbelief, against all fear, she had managed to save him. Outside the hospital, police sirens announced the arrival of the authorities. Maria watched from the window as they led Clarice away in handcuffs. The woman who had been so powerful, so untouchable, now screamed and kicked like a child throwing a tantrum. "This is a mistake, you'll pay for this, I didn't do anything, it was her, it was the maid." But no one was listening. The truth had spoken louder than privilege. 3 days later, when Eduardo was strong enough to receive visitors, Dr. Enrique took Maria to his room. She hesitated at the door, suddenly shy, questioning whether she had the right to be there. But the doctor gently pushed her inside. Eduardo sat on the bed, still pale but with clear, conscious eyes. When he saw Maria, his face changed. "You?" he said, his voice still hoarse. "They said you were the one who saved me." Maria didn't know what to say. She stood there, nervously wringing her hands. I saw what she did. I couldn't let it happen." Eduardo extended his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Maria took it. His hand was warm, alive, real. "Maria, for 15 years you worked in my house, and I never really saw you, did I? I never asked your full name, never knew about your dreams, your family. You were just the maid." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes again. "Mr. Eduardo, forgive me." The words came out filled with genuine emotion. "Forgive me for being so blind. You risked everything to save me. Your life, your safety, everything. And I didn't even know who you really were." Maria squeezed his hand, feeling decades of invisibility finally dissolving. "You don't need to." "Yes, I need to." Eduardo sat up straighter, determination returning to his face. "When I leave here, things will change. You won't be an employee anymore. I'll give you a position in the company, with a decent salary, with respect. And if you want to study, if you have a dream you've never been able to fulfill, I'll help you. It's the least I can do." But Maria shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "You don't have to do this out of obligation, sir. It's not an obligation. It's justice. And it's gratitude." He looked at her with an intensity Maria had never seen before. "You taught me something I had forgotten, that a person's worth is not in their social class or their bank account. It's in their courage, their honesty, their ability to do what is right even when the whole world says you're wrong." 6 months later, Maria no longer worked at the Almeida mansion. She worked in the company's office, in the Human Resources Department, helping to implement fair employee policies. Eduardo had financed her studies, and she was taking a business administration course on weekends. But more importantly than that, she had recovered something she had lost over the years, her voice. Because Maria's true redemption didn't come from money or promotion. It came from understanding that her voice always had value, even when no one wanted to hear it. It came from learning that doing the right thing isn't always easy, nor always safe, but it's always worthwhile. And it came from realizing that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the most money or status, but the one who has the courage to speak the truth. Clarice was sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder. Dr. Silveira lost his license for complicity. And Maria finally learned not to lower her head, because in the end, justice doesn't choose social class, and the truth always finds its way, especially when someone has enough courage to carry it. If you've made it this far, to the end of Maria's journey, it's because this story touched something within you. Perhaps it reminded you of a time when you too had to choose between silence and truth, or perhaps it made you realize that courage doesn't come ready-made. It's born from fear and grows with every step we take. If these stories resonate with you, if you enjoy following narratives about overcoming adversity, justice, and real people facing impossible challenges, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. I bring you these stories every week, and each one carries a message that can transform the way you see the world. Leave a like if this story resonated with you in any way. It helps me understand that I'm on the right track, and motivates me to continue bringing you these narratives that ultimately are about all of us. And comment below. I'm with you until the end. I want to know who stayed with me on this whole journey, who felt every emotion along with Maria. Your comments nourish my soul and show me that I'm not alone in this mission of telling stories that matter. There's another video over here that I know you'll like. It's about a similar story, about someone who also had to face the impossible. Click and stay with me there. We'll see each other soon. See you later.